Hello, Northstar here with another episode of Centauri. Let's play. Hold on, am I getting... There's gotta be some way to see if the game's working. The game audio, sorry. Looks like it. I was having some problems with OBS in the last video for some stupid reason. It reset all the input sources and all the different audio scenes here. Really not sure what was going on with that, but I guess this will be a quick video. Mostly make sure the sound's working correctly, push things a little further along, and honestly make up for the last video, which was complete silence. Must have been miserable at certain points where we're talking about things. I did some musings on peace here, and I probably disband some of my military units after I make peace with Sparta, because the minerals, if I get half the mineral cost of a rover back or any military unit, I disband it, and that actually produces higher returns on colony pods and formers, investing the minerals that way than if I just hunt mindworms until the rovers die. Or, yeah, because when the rover's gone, there's nothing back. So if you give a value to a psionic battle, when the rovers lose, I've essentially lost the entire cost of the rover, or maybe even half. Shoot, give me a sec. Huh, no, wait, actually, I was wrong. It occurred to me that I was making the wrong comparison. I was assuming how profitable is it to have a rover fight till it dies, or place the rover fight till it dies over and over that cycle. If versus just, I'm not explaining it well. If I were to not replace the rovers and just fight them until they die, then when they die, it's losing half their cost in minerals, sort of. Because that's what I would have gotten if it hadn't been lost at that point. I shouldn't produce more rovers, but the rovers are an existing asset. And that changes the math. It goes from currently a rover has 2/3 chance of moving to fungus. Then if it were able to successfully move into fungus when it with its full moves, and actually if I move it first, it's even less. But it's got a 1/3 chance of finding Mindworms, so it's about 4.5, maybe 5, or even 6 turns of support embedded each time I find a Mindworm. When I attack, I have about a 60% chance of winning. That's 3-2 odds. 3-2. So I have that 5 total strength, around 3s on the side of the attacker. But if I lose the battle, I'm just going to attack with another rover, and if I lose that, another. So I'm pretty much guaranteed to kill the Mindworm eventually. It's just a question of how much support do I pay out, and how many rovers do I lose. And a Mindworm gives 30 energy credits, which is, depending on you calculate, worth between 15 and 12 minerals. If I assume I'm only hurrying the last row of stuff, but base facilities are always 2 energy to mineral units. It's often 2.5 if I'm doing the whole last row. And have enough energy. I was already doing the second half. It's actually a little more than 2.5, but so it's like 7.5 net minerals over the support to produce each battle. And and that occurs at a rate of every 4.5 turns. I would, if I were to span them instead, 3 rovers. I'm doing the math for you guys so you understand, because it's useful if you ever play this game. 3 rovers disband to get 1 colony pod. The mineral cost, there's also nutrient cost, but in terms of moving, pops out, and when you establish a base, you're going to be increasing the base yields. Well, this is wrong because that one has a recycling tanks, but 2 extra nutrients, extra mineral, extra energy, though some of that goes in efficiency, and 2 support. So it's like somewhere between 5 and 6 mineral equivalents every turn. Plus faster growth. There's some other benefits. Territory control, healing. So let's say 6 mineral equivalents. So 2 a turn versus, I don't know, 7.5, 7 every 3 turns. And the rovers, as they get more experience, they have even less odds of dying. I know, but I am then losing the disband cost. I'm just looking at the 12 versus 4.5 and completely forgetting I'll lose some. Well, it could just be an outright comparison at that point. One more moment. Yeah, no, I had it right the first time, because well, you have to factor in the replacement cost of the rovers. Otherwise, it's temporary benefit of you know 3 rovers might produce a net of a little of every 9 turns. Again, 2 battles to produce 15 minerals at most, 60 energy credits. So 30 minerals every 9 turns. It's, well, 21 net. It's a little more than 2 a turn. It's 2 1/3 exactly, actually. But eventually, nothing, because eventually, no matter how elite, the rovers will die. So unless they factor in replacement costs, yeah. I suppose there's some diversion of the small amount of net profit versus the colony pods and reinvestment, but yeah. The math does not work out, at least not at current Mindworm boil sizes. When they get like 2 or 3 sizes larger, it might start to work out. And at that point, I'm probably running out of space for colony pods in, 80 game years. Anyways, that was kind of some of the stuff I was musing over with peace after I deal with Spartans. The Spartans, there were other things. How to deal with the various factions. Deidre, and I mean, you saw this visually, but she is working in Empath Guild at 2 different bases, which is like a tactic where you work on a secret project at 2 bases. Then one of them swaps to another one when you get the tech. You lose some mineral production, but before you have supply cars to save up minerals, it's a way to ensure you race for projects. That's been in the game forever. I mean, Civ games have always had ways to rush wonders. It annoys me that people say, oh, supply cars are cheap. I mean, yeah, it's a reliable way to do it, but Civ 2 had trade caravans, which I saw some stupid comments about camels rushing spaceships, but they actually look like, if I remember correctly, they actually are like delivery trucks when you get into the industrial era. So, and it's realistic, centralizing production. What else? Various other musings like about RAM things, but I should keep hunting mindworms here. Yeah, if the rovers have to should just keep moving fungus to fungus, because if they move out and then in, there's even less chance they get bounced even more. And when they get bounced, obviously I didn't find a worm that turn, even though next star to move in might find one. Anyways, something else that was entirely different on my mind, and by the way, folks new to the series, I apologize. I just jumped right into trying to remember some of the stuff I was recapitulating as I was playing. I should just be playing because, otherwise, how am I going to keep your interest? See anything there? Doesn't hurt to, look around because you never know when the Spartans are going to have a patrol in the area. So having the probe team look. Can't guard anymore once it's Spartan territory, but at least it's no longer next to fungus, so even a ram Mindworm couldn't reach it there. Is it just rovers here? Oh, there's a scout patrol. And these probe teams. Guess, yeah, I'll send the scout patrol with them. Protection against the rare, but existent Mindworm attacks. The Mindworms can spawn on fungus without my entering the tile. Something should guard them. It's a backup. Doing the disciplined rover because if it did get attacked, it would suffer collateral damage, and want the one that's less useful and actually killing Mindworms in some ways to be a damaged rover. I say that, but actually it's the disciplined ones I most want to eat through because they're the least profitable. Whatever. Should probably keep some unit in the base, but keep aggressively hunting Mindworms here. So when these somehow Designated defender. Oh, bloody. Hey. Paired and improved. Because that rover fought at green rank. But yeah, after running the calculations and hunting Mindworms, realizing, well, the profits aren't terrible, but how it scales the combat odds, will do a lot better with empath rovers later and high morale ones. Like, if you have Spartans, you get early empath rovers, you can hunt Mindworms actually at quite a good profit rate. Maybe even better in colony pods, especially as it'll help you get elite rovers earlier, but which are useful in combat with factions to a great deal. As the peacekeepers, though, not so useful. It's 2 turns from the monolith there. It wouldn't have hurt to find another Mindworm. And hunting along rivers is also more profitable. All this math breaks down, so I include rivers. So yeah, but what I may do is nonetheless disband some rovers to quickly raise a bunch of colony pods on Spartan bases so I can abandon some of them, because I think simulation time is based on my turns if factions control the base. You have to control that longer than they did, so some of these bases might be like 100 years to simulate, which by that point, 2/3 of the way through the game. On Librarian, I think the mandatory retirement age is 2400. Mandatory retirement year. Your leader is 300 years old. Ridiculous. Those allusions to technology that drastically extends human lifespans to justify in the game how you always have one leader. Instead of, I mean, most of games don't even try justify it. They just hand wave how you have the same leader for thousands of years. Especially because you can't justify without sci-fi nonsense that obviously was not around in ancient times. So But yeah, scout patrols aren't good for hunting for worms because they get bounced so often trying to enter fungus. I'm pretty sure they discover mindworms at half the rates of rovers, which makes sense. They're slower. They can't cover as much ground. In a way, and in a way, it's an immune reaction of the planet to unnatural scientific things, so rovers are more natural than people on foot. I don't know. Of course, it's really the sentient energy. You'll learn more about that as the game goes on. Like all that kind of sort of nonsense. Kind of sort of. Not entirely, but it's at least internally consistent some ways. Still haven't found another mindworm boil. Not one. Happens, I guess. Yeah, I'm treating this as a way to train up my rovers anyways, not to just get money. Just why I'm actually using the less elite rovers. No, I have to replace more. Because I do need a standing army right now to deal with Sparta. It's more cost effective to maintain a smaller number of elite units. So I have to put something on police using the veteran rovers. Basically, you hunt enough mindworms and you get a nice fat retirement as a police officer. Okay, there's definitely commentary there about police, but because in the real world you see a lot of like police officers be ex-military guys, and well, in the United States, which is probably part of why they're so hyper aggressive, because their anger and violence issues from military, which intentionally dehumanizes people and turns them into killing machines, especially if it's like the Marines or something. Not always well dealt with. And they go and they become police officers and they overreact to fairly mundane stimuli because they came out of battlefields and learned to interpret everything as a threat. It's not entirely their fault. It's the system that fights all these imperialist wars, among other things. Not entirely. There's still choices people make in the end. Can't excuse all of the behavior. People can be both victims of the system they live in and also human beings making flawed choices. Both happen. Support that rover with one that actually can disengage, since I know there's a mindworm about here. If it's on this branch, maybe it'll attack the full health one. Probably not, but it's here. Weaken the mindworms more. That's another thing I can use disengage to sometimes trade off more cost effectively. That means more turns of support. Need that to heal the commando level recon rover until it's strong enough to fend off Mindworm. Well, strong to fend Mindworm until it's got 2 moves again. So it can cross-train quicker and disengage where necessary. Send the recon rover instead of the uni to protect that because the uni is a little more viable. No support costs. Hmm. Uni rover stacking here is mostly an accent. I just want it to not be next to fungus. So it's at less at risk and move this direction since no longer is defending there. But yeah, scout patrols can definitely be very cost effective to patrol along rivers with, so that's worth noting. The rivers still more, I think, less support costs, but also higher replacement costs. That's probably not worth it to, say, drill to an aquifer and plant Xenofungus somewhere just to be able to troll for Mindworms that way. Probably not. I'd have to take it on a case-by-case basis. The more bases you have, the more bureaucracy turns, and the less working more tiles is, advantageous. And there is actually a unit limit in this game, 2,000 units. So, so you can't work the entire map with supply cars, actually. What are these doing? I think they're all hunting for Mindworms. Yep. On a river fungus tile, it's 1 in 9 chance of finding Mindworms, but no bounce chance, so that's the most efficient place to troll for them. It's only 3 turns instead of 4.5 to find a Mindworm on average with a rover. And that's if they only move through 3 fungus tiles, not more, which they can actually manage more. Okay, so economics of hunting Mindworms actually work out. Sort of.
Terraform complete.
Okay. Just not finding any mindworms. Mindworm. That's the uni rover. Those scattered around. I think I explained before I shouldn't be too cautious with them because I'll have clean reactor units eventually, which will just be as good or better.
Indigenous life form.
There's a mindworm. Where I least want to find one. I mean, there's one to do it. Because there's that rover there. Most of my worm hunters right now moves around here. Alright, well, if I fail, scout patrol, there's the uni rover to clean up after. But I didn't fail. Yeah, could have leveled up. That would have been cool. Next turn, there will be a former. Possibly that's got a move. Where will I go? The food program is growing rapidly. Gonna have a new base up here eventually. A refugee relief. Oh yeah, that's right. here. It's building a road out to this, and then there's farms and such around it. These are all high altitude farms, good places for solar panels, because eventually the energy will be restrictions will be lifted. Yeah, I'm probably gonna want to move stuff a whole bunch of tiles that way. So I wanted to try and bring a, oh yeah, a former there. Could do that. Maybe I have to try. Guaranteed to work if I go here. Former goes here. Transport goes there. Get right to work on the farm mine. Something for World Food Program to work is it gives relinquishes its nutrient resource. And maybe it's can answer soon after to the smaller, newer base. Cool. Repairs. Eventually this is going to win on a defensive fight. I'm not even sure I should keep bombarding that. I think native life can be destroyed, but maybe not when it's in fungus. Maybe there's a restriction. But, down a bunch here, so we'll save.
Pod recovered.
Ah. Unipod. I mean, unifoil. Shoot, but it's not independent. It's getting mineral support from here, actually. Preventing the construction of this former. I could disband, but the logical thing is probably actually to change its support. Defense command, I guess. Or have a different unit support here. Ah. Scout patrol. All the way here. From oceans, too, really. Guess I can go to monitoring agency. Get support there in a couple turns. Well, ship's a ship. This thing isn't great, but I could also explore with it. Maybe even find an aquatic pod. Ah. There's no an artifact that could actually be really cool. to you then. And the fungus goes on. It's good to know, I suppose. Ooh, no resources. Pods. Well, smattering of them. The Spartan coast here. Should I have gone there instead? No. No, this is good. Let me see what was up here. All right. Getting that off that peninsula. These have all moved. Boom. Try possible. Use transport to move the server a little further out this way. Maybe. Next turn. We need to project power out that way to deal with, say, a Mindworm. It could be useful. Use this white direction too, or something. Mindworm that one of the rovers dies attacking. That's the idea. Seems just now I could have used this transport to speed that former up before. That was something of a fail. Sec. Took me a sec of thinking what I want to do with this transport. Actually, there is better use than moving that former along, I think. Failed to move. There. And that is get this transport and this one over here to get the alien artifact back quicker, so I don't have to escort it from Mindworms and can put these rovers back to worm hunting. Of course, jealously guarding the alien artifact because tech's already 366 lab points. Artifact is basically a free tech. It's actually at worse, so it'll be well over 400 soon enough. Speaking of technologies, I did have a minor bit of commentary on that. Genetic technology. You will see in this game really powerful genetic technology come out. And indeed, genetics are an extremely powerful where are they? Maritime command could probably use. I mean, a maritime mountain command. Extra nutrients. Let's see. 5 turns. I don't know. The timing's precisely wrong in that. Guess we'll get the Planetary Trust then. But anyways, genetic technology is extremely powerful. It's powerful in the game. It's powerful in real life. I was thinking, seeing once again this current issue coming up of companies like Monsanto, which I actually did a Northstar Talks politics video on some time ago, and GMOs. There's a lot of fear mongering about genetically modified organisms, which can do immense good for society. But what there isn't enough of most of the time is fear mongering about the corporations that are given the power. The technology is not inherently bad. The people in charge of it are vile beyond belief. Monsanto got its start, well, not a start, but it really got big. Got a lot of its size and wealth from providing chemical weapons such as Agent Orange in the Vietnam era, for instance, and napalm manufacturing, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Or no, that was Dow Chemical, which actually provided them some of the feedstocks. God, it's a whole mess. Everything's tied up with the military-industrial complex in the U.S., but basically you can't trust the large companies with such a powerful technology, and indeed, Monsanto's already done really scummy things with control of seed genetic material, and even suing farmers who the seeds blew into their fields, who are just replanting their crops regularly because that's what farmers often do to save money, is replant from the seed of the crop. But some of our proprietary material blew into your field, so you can't do that. Now you have to, hoping that this farmer would trying to pressure that farmer to buy from them and hoping they would. It's ridiculous. And while it's perfectly doable to do GMOs in a safe way, that doesn't mean companies like Monsanto won't cover up unsafe products, especially when they also make pesticides and herbicides that are meant to work alongside their crops. Pesticides shouldn't be such an issue because they tend not to interact with crops, the main plants. Pesticides target animals, but herbicides require some fancy genetic engineering for the herbicide to kill anything but the crop. Uh, and so you get stuff like Roundup, which there's all those accusations of it causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And, you mentioned this, and you're guaranteed to get like 3 trolls on YouTube who come and screw with your video. Hey, trolls, fuck you. They're paid by the company. It's actually a black marketing scheme. This kind of stuff. But I don't know. They messed with my channel the last time I mentioned this, so maybe they'll not bother since I just shut the idiot up. I think I told him he was wrong when he kept trolling and just ban him after he was being obnoxious and rude. And the guy was literally saying, "Oh, I'm a chemist." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a biologist. I know what I'm fucking talking about more than you, who knows nothing about how genotoxicity actually works." Doesn't understand plasma, membrane, nuclear envelope, any of this. And how the thing with glyphosate is it can't cross the nuclear envelope into the nucleus, so it can't cause genotoxic damage on its own. But you combine it with detergents, that pokes holes in the membrane of a cell. That's what detergents do. We use it all the time in biology, either detergents or electroporation, to introduce genetic material when we're trying to do genetic engineering of a cell. This is a standard technique in biology. And that's what the detergent is used for, this mix of Roundup. It allows glyphosate into the nuclei, and it causes DNA damage if it can get into the nucleus. So on its own, the chemical is completely harmless. That's why there's a claim that's not entirely true of a representative drinking the stuff every day for so many years. He did not drink the mix that they apply to crops, which has detergent. You drink the chemical in isolation, it's harmless. You could literally drink it, but like with a glass of water, I wouldn't do it. But I mean, it's still gross, and who knows what, maybe there is some effect that's being missed, but all the evidence seems to indicate it's harmless when it's on its own. But you mix it with detergent, and which you would not drink soap anyways, because that stuff is toxic. I mean, drinking large amounts of detergent is going to make you very sick regardless. Mixed detergent is not only something that has the potential to cause cancer, and this evidence was covered up by Monsanto, which is bought by Bayer, and now you're freaking CEO who sounds like a little Nazi trying to deny that there's any danger. To this day, even after they paid out billions and billions in settlements, because the evidence indicates quite strongly that there's a risk. But companies do this. And this is a commentary on capitalism. They never, ever admit defeat on an issue, no matter how clearly wrong they are. They settle, and then they say it hasn't been proven in a court of law that we're wrong, because they threaten to drag out lawsuits for decades rather than actually being defeated, so that people will settle with them instead. And then they say we haven't been proven wrong. No, the only reason they settled is because they knew if it was dragged out, they would lose. It's a whole game they play, and this is why capitalism will destroy us all, and already is. You have PFAs, forever chemicals, that 99% of Americans have in their blood or something. These chemicals do not break down. That's another example of something very toxic. I don't want to talk about, I'd be giving too much away if I talked about Smart. I had exposure to someone who did research on these things, but I'm not going to get doxxed by some asshole, but I will say I did know someone who was involved in research that helped lead to a state putting regulations. Well, I didn't knew someone I knew. They were in my social network. And it, as a researcher, academic, we're talking professional networks, not like Facebook. Like professionally, this person was familiar with the laboratory. Anyways, PFAs are very, very, very difficult to break down, very, very dangerous. And like, so you can have ones that were made decades ago, they're still out there in the soil and the water, and they bioaccumulate to the point where we can't now put biosolids, that is human fecal matter that's been processed through a waste treatment plant, it's now sterile. You can't put on crops because there's so much of these PFAs in the waste in many parts of the country that you'll poison the crops, and especially pastures if you do it with animals, because then there's bioaccumulation. Cows eat the grass to have a certain amount of the stuff, and then as you move up a food chain, up trophic levels, you get higher levels of any compound. So, yeah, the -3 planet rating from free market makes absolute sense because capitalism has a well-established record of environmental responsibility, despite all the shade that people threw at the Soviets who weren't perfect. It's the profit motive that has demonstrated to lead to the most irresponsible behavior and cause the most damage. Soviets did a lot of environmental damage, but actually less than most developing economies. You have to compare it to like the worst of what's a good example, India, the worst cities in India, or Bangladesh, or actually the free enterprise zones in China, which are limited areas of free market capitalism on the coast where you can't breathe the air. that's what a developing country normally looks like. It was worse than the environmental damage in the Soviet Union by far. These things. It's probably better long term to keep the rover on the river. No, this turn will find fewer mindworms. Just gonna have to wait here though.
Turn complete.
Cool. Instead of a century, I'm gonna do skip turn.
Complete.
But yeah, there are huge corporate disinformation campaigns, and they are in fact so effective that many people assume someone is ignorant and doesn't know what they're talking about, or some anti-science person. If they mention well-established scientific evidence about things like glyphosate, PFAs, any of the toxic chemicals that we're surrounded by, by the way, PFAs much, much worse than glyphosate because they pretty much never break down. What they are organic compounds, that is organic meaning carbon, that chains of carbon with multiple fluorine molecules off of the carbon backbone. I hope I'm making this simple enough. As I said, I have a biology background, specifically more in the molecular biology and genetics, developmental biology kind of side of things. I wanted to go more purely genetics and developmental stuff, but you pretty much can't do biology without being forced to learn a lot of molecular biology and biotech kind of stuff. because it's got industry applicability, so universities like to teach it. Anyways, but this is from organic chemistry, which you need to become a physician, which I was on the verge of becoming a physician before I got disabled long COVID of entering an MD program. So, I mean, now everyone enters an MD program, makes it through, although the graduation rates are like 98%. The bigger barrier is getting residency, where sometimes residency match rates can be as low as in the 70s for some med schools. So I probably would have made it become a physician. Whether I would have made it to be a practicing physician is another issue entirely. But doing the weird thing of going into that from being a scientist, it's not a typical pathway. I got a lot more hard science background than most pre-meds ever did, because I did an actual graduate degree in biology, and then clinical research stuff. In fact, would have, if I hadn't gotten disabled, would have had 3 graduate degrees before even starting MD. So highly educated here. But carbon, 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 backbone. Carbons linked to carbons. This is very common in a lot of molecules. And then you have fluorines. You have like 1, 2 fluorines off of each of the carbons that's linked to 2 other carbons. Sometimes then you have 3 then. These kind of molecules are insanely stable. And because they're stable, I don't mean that they can't react with anything ever, but the bonds are very high energy. I mean, sorry, low high energy. God, I'm misspeaking. Sorry, very low energy. Actually, there's very little. Oh, hi, God, my brain's a little. Basically, it would take an enormous amount of energy to break these bonds. I'm tired. I'm long COVID. There's holes in my memory, unfortunately, thanks to this disease. But it take and I always, this was a terminology I would always just accidentally say wrong. Anyways, high, low energy. Um, it's an energetic valley because I always imagine it graphically instead with the words. Um, because it takes so much energy to break these bonds, it doesn't happen hardly out in the environment, and so if you have just produced just a little bit of these compounds, decade after decade, it accumulates and accumulates, accumulates. Even though then maybe you finally stop producing it, there's a lot accumulated, and decades, generations later, it'll still be there, still causing cancer and such. Uh, and the risks are much, much greater. I think the evidence with glyphosate, with the actual Roundup solutions, that detergent was, I think, in actual use, which is not the same as like laboratory tests, where when you mix it with detergent, you actually got much higher rates of cancer in rats and monkeys and such. No, did they do it in monkeys? I think the sample size in that study was too small to make conclusions, but rats, anyways. Which there are issues with using rats, and population studies with humans, though, with actual use and realistic exposure, showed a 40-ish% increase in the risk of one particular cancer. That sounds bad, but there are thousands of cancers. It's one of the more somewhat common ones, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I think it was, but that's not an enormous risk. Heck, that representative who was drinking glyphosate could have drank with detergent, and he probably still would have more likely than not been fine, especially since he was doing it when he was old, and he wouldn't have had time for cancer to develop. Because if you cause a mutation when you're young, it's much worse than if you cause it when you're old, and there's less time for mutations to pile on each other. Carcinogenesis is a whole complex topic. That is the generation of tumors, cancer. Tumors isn't precisely accurate because they're actually non-solid cancers that don't actually form tumors in the classic sense, and lymphomas are actually an example of this. Though we often refer tumorigenesis, carcinogenesis more or less interchangeably, because almost all cancers are solid. There are very few that aren't. But the ones that aren't are incredibly important, so, and common, some of them. But yeah, a 40% increase in the risk of one of the rarer cancers. that's bad and all, but some of these PFAs are causing something like a 20% increase in the total risk of cancer, which, to put that in perspective, that's like 100 times worse. And they never break down. Uh, and they're produced in the manufacture of things like Teflon, famously, which there were issues with actual Teflon use sometimes, still having some residual levels of these.
Request
I forget if
confirmation.
Teflon itself was a PFA, but you could definitely we're getting PFAs from the Teflon pans. That was why they had to change that. Um, but then I think they're relaxing that when they realized it's everywhere. Sure, that might be a proximate source, but these compounds are in your drinking water, in your food. They're everywhere because they've been accumulating in the environment for decades, for like 50, 60 years now. So restricting Teflon pans wasn't actually doing that much to protect people. That doesn't mean the compounds are super dangerous. It just means your total exposure wasn't going out that much because it was already so massive. The Teflon pan was often proper use, not making an enormous difference. That does not mean that it wasn't in itself a dangerous thing. That if it wasn't everywhere in the environment, wouldn't be a problem. All right. I think I moved everything. I don't think there's any reallocation of workers, but I'm going to cut the video here. It's gone long. I'm not even sure that sound's recording. I hope it is. I will see you folks next time. Um, Sorry to kind of cut off mid chain of thought here, but hey, how many of you are even listening at this point? I hope it's some. But this series has been going on for long, and older series don't get many viewers. Probably I've got like 1 month Santo troll listening who will decide it's not even worth it when he sees the view totals to screw with me, and 3 random people will get halfway through the video and exit. But if you are listening viewers, I wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. May you always find a guiding star lead you home. Till next time, this Northstar. Adieu, and good luck.